might be a good time to move on to the third topic, which is housing, which we've sort of touched on as we've gone through anyway, but it would be good to get a sort of general consensus about the issue. Obviously, the government has been making, pre-Brexit anyway, the government was making sort of large claims about wanting to increase the number of houses being built, and raising the hundreds of thousands a year, as has been the kind of headline figure for some time. But we're not getting there as a country, because obviously there are issues in that the government doesn't actually build anything.
Or invest in building them.
So what more can they do, or what should they be doing to help house builders, to help manufacturers, so that we can build the number of houses that that people say that we need? House builders
don't need any help.
Okay.
What house builders need is a kick up the backside to actually do what we need them to do.
So it's the house builders
you're back to the point Peter made earlier. I mean, it's in the remit of the house builders to do what they want. It's not in their interest to build too many houses, because if they build too many houses, they're not going to make as much money out of those houses. Okay. So, unfortunately, until somebody comes along with a magic wand to kick them up the backside to deliver the numbers that we need, and I think John's point is spot on, rather than going from 160,000 to 250, 300,000, let's get 190, 200,000 a year, every year for the next 10 years, and we'll all be happy.
It comes down to political ideology. You have a government that is non-interventionist, that fundamentally believes regulation is a bad thing, and if you free up the markets, then the market will solve the problems. The issue is if the market is imperfect, it won't solve the problems. That's the issue. I think my view is we could easily build 190 to 200,000 houses a year. The capacity exists for that. You do a bit more timber frame, you do a little bit more off-site, but the capacity exists for that. The land is there, it's consented, but
make life easier for self-build as well.
Historically, John, when you go back in time, when we was at our peak, say, 70s, 80s, we were building a lot more social houses.
Yeah, we were. And
you look at the
more small
percentage now,
buildings.
it's peanuts compared to private.
Yeah.
Encourage self-build as well, because self-build is good for us all as an industry, because generally self-builders tend to use a better quality of product, materials, finishes, because it's going to be their dream home.
Their home. Yeah.
I think John says about small builders, but if you go to a council planning meeting, it'll be the big builder will get the planning approved quicker, and for small developments, because they can throw a wee bit of money at the council to fix a few roads and do a roundabout and stuff, whereas the wee builder, he can't, but he's the one that probably should be doing the 10 unit development over a period of time. So the big boys are grabbing a bit of that. You said, what is the government doing? Well, we've already got low interest rates. The banks are lending lots of money. There's help to buy scheme. There's demand. So there's a lot. The help is already in the industry for the house builders, and they're making good money. But it is about how do you start get new house builders to build more,
So
or even new
the
to
smaller
online.
house builders, you mean, rather than the big volume.
That they have the challenge of scaling up. How do you scale up? Because there's a wee bit of investment required.
And then there's the issue of lending, because it's still a major issue for, talk to the FMB, it's still borrowing money from banks for investment for small builders. Still a very,
from
very
that
difficult
end,
process.
yeah.
So, there needs to be something done there. But those days when we were building 300,000 homes, Peter's right, it was social housing, so we need to look at some form of council housing in whatever format that needs to be. And I think it was 40% of all homes were actually built by SME builders. Now it's less than 10%.
Yeah.
So without those two things happening, without a resurgent SME builders, and without some form of financial incentives, ease of access of lending, it's not going to happen. And actually I slightly disagree with these guys. 190,000 might be good for the industry, but the fact is, as a country, we need to be building a lot more of that to make sure that our kids and grandkids have got homes in the future. And by the way, it's about building homes, not houses. So I think we get too obsessed with building houses, then you're into a whole debate about the quality of what we put people in.
It may need a shift in mindset and all, in terms of, if you compare UK to the continent. I mean, the UK, typically you grow up, you buy a house. the continent you don't.
Yeah.
No.
It's a rental, so it's a lease. So maybe there's something there with, looking from leases, which is a more cost-effective way, maybe, rather than the mortgage and the worries with mortgages. But, typically UK, you would leave home to buy your own house and get a mortgage, and that's what you do. You don't do that on the continent.
No. Or shared ownership. You have 2 or 3 people clubbing together to buy properties rather than
So I think
one individual.
You might need a
trying
bit
to
of
buy.
creative thinking, really, in terms of just how you get tenants and people in these houses.
A few of the issues we talked about today about apprenticeship schemes, government. You could have a local authority apprenticeship scheme to build social housing. It is that type of radical thinking because, the guys are right. House builders are there to make money, not to build as many houses as they can. That's business.
Yeah.
It's a free market.
And I think that's the trouble, isn't it, when you're trying to balance a social issue with business concerns, and the two often don't come together well. So as you said, you've got the house builders, particularly the volume guys. Generally, maybe I'm wrong on this, my perception is always that they tend to build larger houses because the return on investment is better than building your kind of affordable housing, which is what the market needs in order to help people get on the first ladder, which then means that people can then sell their houses and buy the next one, and it trickles back up.
But the house builders are in a great position, really. They've written down all the land the last 3 years, so they've wiped all that out and had a really bad, big bath, as I would say, 2 years ago. So you can't fail now.
But don't forget, it was a government initiative that stimulated the housing market in the first instance, because that presentation from Miller Homes 3.5 years ago, Help to Buy as an initiative. We talk about government intervention and it doesn't work, but actually there's a great example of where it did work, because it was that particular initiative that got private house builders building again. So I think government intervention can work, actually, if it's the right type of intervention. John's right about the government approach currently, but there are examples where, it's not all Green Deal. There are things that they've actually launched which actually have succeeded and did get Britain building again. It's just we're still not building enough. And the problem is everybody bandied. I was at the Lib Dem conference a week or so ago. They're talking about 300,000 homes, and how do we get there? All of them are banding numbers around without any real concise plan of actually how to get to those figures.
No, of course.
And it's a complex subject, and it requires issues on planning. It requires financing. It requires SME builders to start building more again. There's not one solution to this problem.
No, and I think that's the problem, isn't it? People are coming at it trying to say, well, we'll do this, so we'll start Help to Buy, we'll change the planning laws, things like that, and then it will all be fine. And of course it's not, because it's, as you said, it's a much more complex issue, and you almost need somebody to kind of take the whole issue of housing back to scratch and start again.
First thing you need is a cabinet minister to look after it. I mean, that's the other. I still can't believe, given the importance of housing for every party, that we don't have a dedicated individual who's focused on that one issue. I just don't get that.
Yeah.
Doesn't it come completely back to Peter's point, though, about it's a cultural, social issue, isn't it, in terms of house building? Major house builders build for commercial reasons, don't they? But we're talking about the government building in some form to provide housing for a distressed part of the demographic rather than an aspirational purchase. That's the cultural difference, isn't it?
That's it.
You used to have the Ministry of Defence. How many houses did they build? Occupational housing. How many houses did Cadbury's build for their employees and things like that? All that's disappeared, isn't it? Housing's now just surely looked at as a commercial enterprise, and it's not. You talk about building the volume of houses you're talking about. It's for a cultural demand, a sociological demand, not a commercial demand.
Yeah, no, that's
But we
a
don't
good point.
build council houses anymore, do we?
No.